Hey everybody, welcome to myboardgameguides.com. My name is Chris, and today I will guide you through the strategy do's and don'ts for the card drafting game Sushi Go. Okay, so what we have in front of us here is our initial setting for the do's and don'ts video for Sushi Go. And this set of cards right here represents us, the player, and then we also have our two opponents, right? This one's to our left, and this one is to our right. Each player has already drafted 4 cards, and we'll use this initial setup to kind of talk you through the strategy do's and don'ts. So the first do's and don'ts to consider when you're playing Sushi Go is actually a very important one because a lot of the other tips, the other do's and don'ts, follow from this case. So our first do is do look at what your opponents are drafting. That is very, very important. So particularly look to see if they need to have sets completed, whether it's a set of, say, the 10-point sashimi, or you're seeing that they're collecting a set of dumplings. So when you pay attention to the cards that they've drafted, you might be able to find opportunities to deny them the cards they need to maximize the points from their sets, because this is your current point value. And we want to be able to keep as much of a lead as possible. You see in player 2, they only have 2 sashimi, so that's not worth any points to them at all, which means they will be definitely wanting to get that 3rd sashimi to get 10 points. But you also notice they have an empty wasabi on the board. So this wasabi is not paired up with any nigiri, so it's currently worth 0 points. Over here, we see that this player has drafted 3 dumplings so far, which is worth 6 points. And they also have a maki roll that's worth 3 maki rolls. So he's currently winning the lead for maki rolls. And if you look at your hand, and you're passing to the player to your left, well, we have, let's see, a salmon nigiri, we have a piece of pudding, we have a maki roll, a dumpling, but hey, we also have a piece of sashimi in our hand. And we know that if the player to our left collects the sashimi, they will get a whopping 10 points. On the other hand, if they just get the nigiri, then it's only going to be worth 2 points to them. So the good strategy in this case is to deny them the sashimi by drafting it yourself, even though you won't get points for it, and letting the player to your left draft the nigiri, because that way they only get 6 points instead of 10 points, and by doing that, you will have preserved your lead. So that's the first do, which is, I think, very self-explanatory and very important to this game, is do look at what cards your opponents are drafting. Now the second piece of advice for you to do while playing Sushi Go is do aim for a card to point ratio of above 2 if it's possible. So you look on this board, you see that so far every player has drafted 4 cards, 4 cards, 4 cards. What you should think about is trying to increase the point ratio for every card you draft. So here we have a hand board that is worth 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on 4 cards. So let's see, 10 divided by 4, that's 2.5 points per card. That's pretty damn good. Move over to here, we notice that the player only has, well, 3 points if they maintain second place in the maki roll. So they've got 4 cards and they've only got 3 points for it. That's a very terrible ratio. And here, this player has 6 points from the dumplings currently, and they are currently in the lead for maki rolls. So that's currently 12 points that they potentially have on 4 cards. That's 3 points per card. That's insanely good. So this player is definitely the one to watch out for because they are playing their hand extremely efficiently. So just remember, whenever you draft a card, you want to make sure you can get a strong advantage or deny your opponent from scoring a boatload of points. So try to get at least 2 points for every card you draft. And if you can hit this goal, you'll have a pretty good chance of winning. So do aim for a card to point ratio above 2 if possible. Finally, our third and final do is balance your priorities between point scoring and denial. So remember that when you play Sushi Go, winning by 5 points is basically the same as winning by 1 point. So if you're in the lead, which you currently aren't because this player has more points, but if you're in the lead, your goal should be to protect that lead, whether it's by making sure you don't come in last, by getting that pudding that's going to be vitally important towards the end, or by just making sure that you can deny your opponent that sashimi they really need. So make sure that no one gets away with collecting a bunch of points, whether it's from maki rolls or whether it's from sashimi cards. So when you're playing, do balance the priorities between increasing the points for your board and also denying points from other players, because if you deny points from other players, it's the same as you getting points. So try to maximize that as much as possible. Finally, we go over to the donks. And the first one is kind of similar to all the philosophies that I've talked to you about with Sushi Go. The first one is don't get tunnel vision over your own board. Don't be so focused on maximizing your board that you forget about what other people are drafting. So for example, in this case, you might say, oh, well, if I draft the second salmon nigiri, that will be worth 2 points to me, and I will have maximized the number of points I would have gotten from this hand, because none of these other cards are really worth that many points. Maki rolls, you could potentially tie for first place, so maybe that's something you might decide to go for. But you're not certain about what other people are going to draft, so let's say you decide not to draft that. Or if there's this dumpling card that's only worth 1 point, whereas this salmon nigiri will give you 2 points, so you feel like that drafting that's the best option. But of course, if we follow the first do, then you will know that you will be passing the sashimi card over to this player, and by doing that you will have given them 10 points. Your board tunnel vision just gave your opponent a 10-point bump, and that's not good. So don't let any cards slip through, because you're just not going to win that way if you don't both try to maximize your board score, but also trying to minimize your opponent's score. So don't get tunnel vision over your own board. The second policy that you should not do is don't get into fights that you can't win. For example, if somebody has positioning over you, so let's say you're this player and you decide that the best policy might be to just get all of the sashimis. Then you suddenly find out that this player has just drafted a sashimi piece. Well, it's probably time for you to abandon any hope of getting another sashimi and just move on and try to make the best you can of what is probably a very bad situation. Likewise, if let's say this player has 6 points worth of maki rolls, and you get a hand that looks something like, let's see, something like this. These cards right here. Well, you'll know by now that it's a little bit too late to fight this player for the Maki Roll Award because they've already made considerable progress towards winning it. So maybe it's best just to divert your strategy, cut your losses, and maybe go for something else like the salmon nigiri or even the pudding. So when somebody has already invested so many cards into winning a certain category, so let's say this is what this person's Maki roll pile looks like, and you feel like there's going to be no way you can compete against that, don't engage in a fight that you can't win, because remember, you want to maximize the points per card value as much as possible. And if it's no point chasing and drafting 4 cards just to try to catch up to them, even though they've already got a very strong lead. So that's my tip. Don't get into fights that you cannot win, because overinvesting in cards and missing out on other point opportunities will not benefit you in the long run. And finally, the last don't, and it's a pretty important don't in my opinion, is don't neglect the pudding. Yes, the pudding can be can be kind of a low priority when you're trying to complete sets and everything, but this card can be a game changer in the end. Now, if you watched my video guide on how to play Sushi Go, you'll know that I've said that people who have the most sushi pieces get 6 points, and the person who has the least number of sushis loses 6 points. So if you find yourself on the losing end, that's going to be a 12-point swing against you and the person who is in first place. And if that person was in second place prior to the pudding score and you were in first place, you just lost the equivalent of 12 points. So ignore those at your peril, because if you find yourself having the fewest puddings, well, that might just cause you to lose the lead entirely and cause you to lose the game. So that's my last tip. Don't neglect the puddings. All right, hopefully you found this guide to be really helpful. Go below to subscribe if you're interested in seeing more tips and strategies for some of your favorite board games. And I'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye.